The room felt like it could burst. Cameras hummed. Lights glared. You could almost hear the tension crackling in the air. Governor Greg Abbott sat at the long witness table, shoulders straight, voice calm, the picture of confidence. For years, he'd ruled Texas politics like a chessboard, never flinching, never folding. His wheelchair stood centered before the microphones, the perfect shot for every network in the country. "Thank you, Mr. Chairman," he began. His tone was smooth, practiced, heavy with authority. This bill, the Community Protection Act, will keep Texans safe. It gives law enforcement the tools they need to protect families and maintain order. He smiled as flashes burst from every angle. But at the far end of the panel sat one woman who didn't smile, Representative Jasmine Crockett. From Dallas leaned slightly forward. Her pen didn't stop moving. She wasn't doodling. She was building a case. For 72 hours straight, she had read every word of that bill, cross-checked every clause, reviewed every precedent, talked to every civil rights lawyer she could find. By the time Abbott finished his opening speech, she already knew exactly where his argument would fall apart. The committee chair cleared his throat. The chair recognizes Representative Crockett for 5 minutes. The air changed. Reporters sat up. Camera crews adjusted their zoom. Even staffers against the wall stopped whispering. Everyone in that room knew 5 minutes from Jasmine Crockett could change a career, or end one. She adjusted her microphone, calm and steady. "Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Governor Abbott, thank you for joining us today." Her voice carried cleanly through the chamber. "Before we discuss details, I want to make sure I understand your central claim. You say this bill is necessary to keep Texans safe, correct?" Abbott nodded, smiling. "That's right, Congresswoman. Public safety is our highest duty." Crockett nodded too, but the movement was slow, deliberate. "Good," she said softly. "Then let's talk about what this bill actually does." A few heads turned. That single line carried weight. She lifted a thick folder full of notes and colored tabs. "Section 7, she said. "A new offense called organized disruption. Can you tell this committee what that means?" Abbott's voice remained calm. "It refers to groups that block roads or interfere with lawful commerce. Common sense law enforcement." Crockett flipped to a page. "Let me read your own words, Governor. Organized disruption shall be defined as any gathering of 3 or more persons that creates or has the potential to create interference with normal activities, traffic flow, or business operations." She looked up. "Under that language, couldn't college students protesting tuition hikes be charged? Or parents outside a school board meeting? Or workers on a picket line?" Abbott's smile faltered. "Those are hypothetical situations." "They're not hypothetical," she said quickly. "They're daily American life. Protected First Amendment activity. And your bill would make it a felony." A low buzz spread through the crowd. Journalists started typing. One camera light flickered brighter. Abbott leaned toward the mic. "You're misunderstanding the intent." "I'm not interpreting anything," she replied, steady as steel. "I'm reading your words." She turned another page. "Section 9 authorizes police to disperse any gathering they believe might become disruptive." "That's prior restraint, Governor. The Supreme Court ruled long ago that the government can't silence people because it fears what might happen." Abbott tried to regain footing. "Public safety sometimes requires—" "Public safety," she interrupted, "does not override the Constitution." The gallery gasped. Her tone wasn't loud. It was surgical. "Section 11, she continued, "makes it a crime to use social media or text messages to coordinate activities that could result in disruption. Governor, that criminalizes communication itself. Facebook posts, tweets, group texts." She paused, eyes locked on the cameras. "You've turned free speech into evidence of conspiracy." Abbott's jaw tightened. "There are safeguards. Where?" she asked instantly. "Show me." She raised the marked-up bill high enough for the cameras to catch it. "I've read this front to back 3 times. Constitutional experts from Texas Law, SMU, and Baylor read it too. You know what they all said? It wouldn't survive its first constitutional challenge. Silence. This bill," she continued, voice measured, "would silence dissent and criminalize protest. A murmur rippled again. Abbott tried a different tone, softer, almost patronizing. Representative Crockett, as someone newer to Congress, perhaps. "Stop right there," she cut in, eyes blazing. "Before I came to Congress, I spent 15 years as a civil rights attorney. I've defended protesters. I've challenged unconstitutional laws like this in federal court. Don't tell me I don't understand what I'm reading," gasps again. Every camera in the room zoomed closer. Abbott froze. For once, he had no script ready. She pressed on. "Let's look at real consequences. After the 2020 protests, 17 states passed similar laws. In Oklahoma, grandmothers were arrested outside the state house. In Florida, environmental volunteers faced felonies for holding climate change signs on a beach. In Iowa, disability advocates were prosecuted for blocking a senator's doorway while demanding health care. That's what happens when laws like yours hit real people." Abbott shifted in his chair, discomfort visible. "And your bill," she said, "goes even further. Section 12 says anyone who gives material support to a protest that leads to arrest can be sued. That means if a church hands out water bottles, they can be sued. If a cafe lets activists use the restroom, they can be sued. If a lawyer provides free legal advice, they can be punished." Her words fell like heavy stones. "Governor," she said quietly, "you're not protecting communities. You're choking them. This isn't public safety. It's control." One reporter whispered, "She just called it authoritarian." Abbott's face flushed red. "That's completely unfair, is it?" She replied, "Tell me, under your bill, could the Selma marchers of 1965 be arrested?" He hesitated. "That's a different historical context. Answer yes or no. It would depend. Yes or no, Governor?" He hesitated again. The silence in that moment felt endless. Crockett leaned forward. "Section 7 says 3 or more people interfering with traffic flow can be charged. Section 9 says police can disperse any group they think might be disruptive. Section 12 punishes anyone who helps them. That means every man and woman who marched from Selma to Montgomery would have been criminals under your law." The chamber erupted. Reporters shouted. Lawmakers pounded their desks. The chairman struggled to gavel order. Crockett didn't move. She raised a small, worn copy of the Constitution. "The First Amendment doesn't say, unless a governor decides otherwise," she said. "It says no law shall abridge the freedom of speech or the right to peaceably assemble, period." Every word hit like a hammer. "You call this common sense safety. I call it unconstitutional overreach," Abbott's team whispered urgently behind him, trying to find an escape line. None came. Crockett looked down the table toward the chairman. "Mr. Chairman, I move to table any federal funding for this act until a full constitutional review is completed." Gasps again. Several members nodded. Abbott tried to interrupt, but the chairman's gavel struck. "Order, order." The hearing broke into chaos. Crockett stayed calm, gathering her papers. The cameras stayed on her face, not his. By the time she stood, hashtags were already forming online. "Crockett destroys Abbott" blazed across phone screens, but Jasmine wasn't thinking about Twitter. She was thinking about the people who would have lost their right to protest, to speak, to stand together. When she stepped out of the hearing room, a reporter shouted, "Congresswoman, what just happened in there?" She smiled faintly. "Democracy," she said. "That's what happened." She kept walking, cameras trailing behind. In her eyes was something calm, unshaken. Certain, because she knew this wasn't over, and what came next would shock everyone in Washington. The clip of Jasmine Crockett challenging Governor Abbott spread like wildfire. Within hours, it was everywhere. CNN, Fox, MSNBC, TikTok, Facebook, everywhere your aunt and uncle got their news. The title was simple: Crockett versus Abbott, the showdown. People stopped scrolling to watch. It wasn't the yelling that caught them. It was her calm, that steady voice, those clear words, that look in her eyes that said, "You will not twist the Constitution on my watch." In living rooms across America, people leaned closer to their TVs. Some clapped. Some frowned. But no one turned away. By nightfall, Washington was buzzing. Reporters chased Abbott's staff through the Capitol hallways. "Governor, is the bill dead?" someone shouted. He didn't answer. Cameras followed him all the way to the elevator. His jaw was tight, his hands gripping the wheels of his chair just a little harder than before. Meanwhile, Jasmine sat quietly in her office, still in her red blazer, watching the replay on mute. Her aide, Samira, stood beside her holding a phone. "Ma'am, your inbox is exploding. You've got requests from CNN, The View, MSNBC, even local Texas radio stations." Jasmine didn't look away from the screen. "Let them wait," she said softly. "I don't do interviews for attention. I do them for accountability." Outside her window, the Capitol dome glowed against the night sky. She could see it reflected in the glass, a reminder of every person who'd ever fought to make sure that building belonged to the people. At that same moment, inside the Texas governor's mansion, the mood was grim. Abbott's communications team crowded around a long oak table, phones ringing non-stop. A press aide whispered, "We need to release a statement tonight before this spirals." Abbott's chief of staff rubbed his temples. "The congressman from Dallas turned you into a symbol, sir." She framed this bill as anti-First Amendment. "We can't let that narrative stick." Abbott's voice was low. "Draft a statement. Say she mischaracterized the bill. But, Governor, just do it." He wheeled himself out of the room. For the first time in years, he felt something rare for a man used to control: doubt. The next morning, the headlines were brutal. Crockett exposes Abbott bill as threat to free speech. Texas governor faces backlash after heated hearing. Authoritarian goes viral. In Dallas, church leaders discussed the bill during morning service. In Houston, college students handed out flyers quoting Crockett's words, "Public safety doesn't override the Constitution." And across small towns, older couples who rarely followed politics found themselves talking about that woman in red who spoke the truth. But Washington doesn't sit still for long. Within 48 hours, lobbyists started calling congressional offices. Police unions wanted reassurance. Civil rights groups demanded answers. On the third day, the Congressional Research Service released its preliminary report. It confirmed everything Jasmine had said. Multiple sections of the Community Protection Act violated the First Amendment. That single document changed everything. Cameras caught Abbott walking through a marble hallway when a reporter asked, "Governor, will you withdraw the bill?" He paused, jaw tight. "We're revisiting certain provisions," which in political language meant only one thing: the bill was dead. Back in Dallas, Jasmine arrived home late that night. Her neighborhood was quiet, porch lights glowing soft and warm. She slipped off her heels, exhaled, and turned on the TV. A local news anchor said, "Representative Crockett's fiery exchange with Governor Abbott is still dominating headlines." Her phone buzzed, a message from her mother. "Proud of you, baby." "Your granddaddy would have loved to see this." Jasmine smiled, eyes glistening. "Thanks, Mama." The next morning, she hosted a small town hall meeting at a community center. No fancy stage, just folding chairs and the smell of fresh coffee. Dozens of people filled the room: teachers, veterans, small business owners, retirees. An elderly woman in a floral blouse raised her hand. "Congresswoman, I was arrested years ago for protesting pollution near my grandson's school. When I watched you in that hearing, I cried. Thank you for standing up for us." Jasmine nodded, voice soft. "You never needed permission to speak, ma'am. You already had that right. My job is just to make sure nobody takes it away." Applause filled the hall. Cameras captured it again? The moment wasn't loud, but it was powerful. Yet even as she smiled, Jasmine knew Washington was already turning. Not everyone liked what she'd done. Inside a private conference room on K Street, a group of political consultants met behind closed doors. One man in a navy suit spoke first. "Crockett's popularity is rising too fast." "The donors are nervous," another chimed in. "We can't let her become a national figure. She's smart, disciplined, and she knows how to use viral media without looking like she's trying to." They began whispering about strategy, op-eds, opposition research, ways to slow her down before she built momentum for a Senate run. Back in Texas, Abbott wasn't finished either. On live TV, he said, "While some in Congress are focused on politics, I remain focused on protecting Texans." He tried to sound strong, but viewers could see the tension in his jaw. A journalist asked, "Governor, will you meet with Representative Crockett to revise the bill?" He forced a smile. "We'll see." Meanwhile, Jasmine returned to Washington for another committee session. The halls buzzed differently now. Staffers nodded as she passed. Even members who had ignored her before stopped to shake her hand. In politics, respect is earned in moments like these. Her aide, Samira, handed her a folder. "You've got a letter from the ACLU, a thank you note from the NAACP, and a meeting request from the Senate Judiciary Committee." Jasmine raised an eyebrow. "The Senate? That's new. They want you to brief them on constitutional oversight. Apparently you've become the expert," she laughed softly. "All I did was read the fine print," Samira smiled. "That's why it worked." Later that night, Jasmine sat alone in her apartment. On her desk lay the same small constitution she had held up during the hearing. She ran her fingers over the worn cover. She thought of the men and women who had marched, protested, and sometimes bled for those rights. Her phone buzzed again, this time from a number she didn't recognize. The message read, "You made powerful enemies. Be careful who you trust." She froze, then deleted the message. The next morning, she told Samira nothing about it. She had work to do, but the warning wasn't empty. Within a week, a whisper campaign began. Anonymous posts claimed she'd embarrassed Texas. Political blogs suggested she was grandstanding for fame, old. Case files from her days as an attorney mysteriously resurfaced online. Jasmine ignored it publicly but privately. She felt the chill of Washington's darker side. One evening, while reviewing policy drafts, her office lights flickered. The building's maintenance crew said it was just a power surge, but Samira looked uneasy. "Ma'am, I think someone's trying to dig into us." "Our emails were acting strange this morning." Jasmine looked up. "Let them. I have nothing to hide." Outside, rain began to fall against the Capitol windows. It was steady, heavy, the kind of rain that felt like cleansing and warning all at once. The next day, a familiar face appeared at her office door. Representative John Lewis III, son of the late civil rights icon. He smiled kindly. "I watched that hearing. You made my father proud." Jasmine felt a lump in her throat. "Thank you. I just did my job." He shook his head. "You did more than that. You reminded people what courage in public service looks like. Don't stop now." That night she couldn't sleep. She replayed the hearing again in her head. Abbott's smirk fading, the silence after her last words, the weight of what she'd said. By dawn, she made a decision. If Washington wanted to come after her, she would fight back the same way she always had, with facts, truth, and the Constitution. 2 weeks later, she was invited to speak at Georgetown Law. The auditorium overflowed with students and professors. When she walked on stage, the room erupted in applause. She raised her hand gently. "Thank you, but please remember this isn't about me. It's about the power of reading what's written and questioning what's hidden." She told the story again, slowly, simply, so everyone could follow. The Texas bill, the hearing, the danger of silence. When she finished, the crowd stood and clapped for nearly a minute. A student shouted, "You should run for Senate." Jasmine smiled. "Let's fix the house first." After the event, as she walked out into the crisp DC night, Samira caught up. "You've got another text, ma'am." Jasmine read it. This one was from an unknown contact again. "They're meeting soon. The plan involves you." Her heart skipped once, then steadied. She slipped the phone into her pocket. Let them meet. The next day, a leaked memo appeared in several news outlets, an internal report showing that corporate donors had coordinated with certain state officials to push the Community Protection Act nationwide. The memo proved everything she'd warned about. Abbott's name was on the distribution list. So were 3 U.S. senators. The scandal exploded. Cable hosts replayed her hearing side by side with the leaked memo. Commentators called it the moment the narrative cracked. Abbott went silent again. No interviews, no press. But inside his team, panic grew. "Governor, this looks bad," his advisor said. "If this memo holds up, they'll investigate funding ties." Abbott stared out the window, jaw clenched. "We'll deny involvement." Back in Congress, Jasmine received a call from the Oversight Committee. "Representative Crockett, we need you to help lead an inquiry into the leaked documents." She hesitated only a second. "I'll do it." By evening, Crockett returns trended nationwide. The stage was set for a second confrontation, not just about one bill, but about power itself. As night fell over the Capitol, Jasmine stood alone on the steps, the city lights stretching into the distance. She whispered, "It's never about one fight. It's about every fight that comes after." She tightened her coat against the cool wind. In the darkness, she could already feel new battles rising. Louder, heavier, closer, and when morning came, she would walk right back into the storm, because that's what she was built for. The morning came gray and heavy over Washington, D.C. The marble steps of the Capitol glistened from last night's rain. Staffers hurried in every direction, phones pressed to their ears, faces tense. Everyone felt it. Something big was coming. Inside her office, Representative Jasmine Crockett poured black coffee into a paper cup. She hadn't slept more than 3 hours. The text message still echoed in her mind. "They're meeting soon. The plan involves you." She'd deleted it, but her instincts wouldn't let it go. Samira entered, holding a stack of folders. "Ma'am, Oversight wants you in the hearing room at 10. They're calling it an emergency session." Jasmine looked up, calm. "What's the subject line?" "Leaked documents, preliminary findings." So it had begun. By 10 o'clock, the chamber was packed. Reporters lined the walls. Camera lights painted every face pale. The chairman tapped the gavel. "This session of the House Oversight Committee will come to order." He turned toward her. "Representative Crockett, you will lead questioning for the minority." She nodded once, eyes steady. Across the table sat officials from the Department of Justice and the Office of Inspector General, there to discuss the memo that had rocked Washington. The first witness spoke quickly, nervously. "Our preliminary investigation confirms that elements of the Community Protection Act were circulated to multiple states with financial coordination from private donors." The room stirred. Jasmine leaned forward. "And can you confirm," she asked softly, "that Governor Abbott's office was included in that coordination?" The man swallowed. "Yes, ma'am." The murmurs grew louder. Cameras clicked. Jasmine's tone remained calm, surgical. "So when Governor Abbott came before this body, he testified under oath that the bill was a state-driven initiative focused on Texas safety. Yet you're telling us it was part of a national strategy funded by private interest groups? That appears to be correct. Who were the donors?" The witness hesitated. "We're still verifying." "Then verify faster," she said. "Because the American people deserve names." The chairman pounded his gavel. "Order!" But order had already dissolved. Every reporter in the room was typing furiously. Across town, Abbott's aides watched the broadcast in silence. One muttered, "She's turning this into a federal investigation." Abbott's chief strategist slammed a folder shut. "We need to control this narrative before it controls us." But the narrative was already gone. By noon, Janker Capitol storm trended on every platform. Clips of Jasmine questioning witnesses spread across millions of screens. Talk radio hosts debated whether this was corruption or just politics. But to the viewers watching at home, it felt simple. A woman was standing up against a system that had stopped listening. That evening, Jasmine sat with Samira and her small legal team in the dim glow of her office. Files covered every inch of the table. Samira pointed to a document. "This donor network links back to a defense contractor. They poured millions into state campaigns that passed similar laws. Then they lobbied Congress for federal funding." Jasmine exhaled slowly. "So it was never about public safety. It was about money." Her phone buzzed. A message flashed across the screen. "You're making dangerous enemies." She ignored it. though her fingers trembled for a second before steadying again. The next morning, the Oversight Committee subpoenaed several lobbyists. One of them, a man named Charles Rayner, had ties to both Abbott's campaign and a Washington consulting firm. When he appeared before the committee, Jasmine's questions were direct. "Mr. Rayner, did your firm draft sections of the Community Protection Act?" We provided general policy language," he stammered. "Did you receive payment from the same corporations that stood to profit from increased policing contracts?" "I can't answer the question, sir." He hesitated, then whispered, "Yes." Gasps filled the room. Jasmine leaned closer. "So you were paid by private corporations to write legislation restricting Americans' right to protest against those same corporations?" Rayner's eyes dropped. "I was following directives." Her tone softened but cut deeper. "You were following money. That's not a directive. That's corruption." The headlines that night wrote themselves, "Crockett uncovers pay to legislate scandal." Back in Texas, Governor Abbott held a press conference. The backdrop showed the Texas flag rippling behind him. "These accusations are politically motivated," he said. "This is an attack on states' rights." But the reporters were relentless. "Governor, did you know about the corporate funding?" No comment. That clip played on repeat for days. In Dallas, crowds gathered outside City Hall carrying signs that read, "We stand with Jasmine and defend the First Amendment." Retired veterans, teachers, and nurses stood shoulder to shoulder. Some said they hadn't protested since the 1970s, but this time felt different. Meanwhile, inside Washington, the investigation deepened. A new document surfaced, an email chain showing Abbott's senior advisor coordinating language changes with Rayner's firm. The date matched the week before the congressional hearing. The revelation hit like thunder. By that weekend, 3 networks devoted primetime specials to The Crockett Inquiry. Viewers across America watched slow-motion replays of her cross-examination. Analysts compared her precision to historical moments, the Watergate hearings, Iran-Contra, the tobacco trials. Jasmine watched none of it. She spent her nights reviewing files, determined to keep the facts pure, free from spin. Samira worried. "Ma'am, you haven't eaten since noon." "I'm fine. You can't keep fighting like this." "I've fought worse," Jasmine said. "Remember, I came from courtrooms where they said justice didn't sell ads." She smiled faintly. But truth still matters. Outside, thunder rolled again. The storm that had hovered over Washington for days finally broke. Rain hammered the Capitol windows while the committee reconvened for its most anticipated hearing yet. The recall of Governor Abbott himself. He returned, this time without his usual grin. The weight of the investigation had stripped away the polish. When he rolled to the witness table, Jasmine stood at her place. The room fell silent. Cameras zoomed in. She began calmly. "Governor Abbott, last time you were here, you said the Community Protection Act was about safety. Since then, we've learned about corporate donors, coordination across multiple states, and undisclosed communications from your own office. Would you like to amend your statement?" Abbott inhaled sharply. "Representative Crockett, I did what I believed was best for Texas." "What you believed," she repeated softly. "Or what you were paid to believe." A wave of gasps filled the air. Abbott glared. "That's an outrageous accusation." "Then disprove it," she said. "Show us bank records, emails, anything that proves your office didn't collaborate with private donors." Abbott turned to his lawyer. "We decline to answer on the grounds of pending litigation." The audience erupted. Jasmine's voice rose, not in anger, but conviction. "Governor, silence doesn't protect you. It only confirms what we already know. This bill wasn't about keeping Texans safe. It was about keeping Americans quiet." The chairman's gavel struck again and again. "Order, order!" But the moment had already broken free. That night, major networks declared Abbott's career severely damaged. Editorial boards demanded resignations. Legal scholars called Crockett's questioning a constitutional clinic. 3 days later, the Justice Department announced an official inquiry into potential misuse of funds and coordination between state and private entities. In her office, Jasmine received the news quietly. Samira grinned. "You did it," Jasmine shook her head. "No, we did it. And it's not done until accountability is." Outside her window, the sun finally pierced through the clouds, yet Washington never sleeps. Within weeks, a new wave of attacks began. False ads, edited clips, rumor pieces claiming she was anti-law enforcement. Each one designed to chip away at her credibility. At a Sunday morning interview, a host asked, "Representative Crockett, are you waging a personal vendetta against Governor Abbott?" She smiled. "No, I'm defending a principle. When leaders break trust, the people deserve to see who signed the contract." Her answer trended again. Back home in Texas, people started mailing handwritten letters to her office. Farmers, retirees, mothers. One note read, "Thank you for protecting voices like mine. We may not march anymore, but we still believe." Jasmine read every one of them. Months passed. The inquiry closed with its final report, 300 pages concluding that sections of the Community Protection Act were drafted by private contractors and promoted through deceptive means. Governor Abbott publicly accepted responsibility for oversight, failures, and announced he would not seek re-election. The news broke on a quiet Friday afternoon. That night, Jasmine walked through the Capitol Rotunda alone. The marble floor reflected the dome light above her. She stopped beneath the murals of the founding debates. For a long moment, she just breathed. Samira approached softly. "It's over?" Jasmine smiled. "No, it's proof that the process still works, if someone's willing to read the fine print." Outside, crowds gathered once more, this time in celebration. Flags waved. People chanted her name, but she kept her distance, watching from the steps. "They're not cheering for me," she whispered. "They're cheering because someone listened." Weeks later, she visited Dallas again. The same grandmother from the earlier town hall waited in line to greet her. She handed Jasmine a small box. Inside was a folded handkerchief embroidered with the words, "Speak plain, stand firm." Jasmine hugged her. "I'll remember that." As months turned into a year, the hearing became part of modern political history. Law school professors played clips in constitutional law classes. High school teachers used it to teach civic courage. One evening, Jasmine sat on her porch, the Texas sunset painting the sky gold and crimson. Her mother joined her, 2 cups of tea in hand. "You stirred up a storm," her mother said with a smile. Jasmine chuckled. "Sometimes you need a storm to clear the air." Her mother looked proud. "You think it'll change anything?" Jasmine watched the fading sun. It already did. People watched. They learned. They remembered their rights. A moment of quiet passed. Then her phone buzzed again, a new message. This one simply read, "Next session, new bill." "Same playbook," Jasmine sighed, smiling faintly. "Here we go again." She stood, straightened her jacket, and looked toward the horizon, because defending freedom never ends. It only continues, through every generation, every courtroom, every hearing where truth still has a microphone. Then the narrator's voice returns, steady and warm. When Representative Jasmine Crockett faced Governor Greg Abbott, it wasn't just politics. It was a reminder that the Constitution still belongs to the people, and that one voice, spoken with courage, can still shake power itself. If you believe in truth, if you believe in accountability, and if you believe that courage still matters, share this story. Hit like, subscribe, and let others know that real leadership doesn't shout. It stands firm. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for more stories where integrity meets power, right here on this channel.